My name is Callista Renner, and I learned the hard way that blood isn't thicker than betrayal. It happened the night my sister cried. Not screamed, not sobbed, just one well-timed, glossy-eyed, trembling lip tear that slid down her cheek like it had been rehearsed a dozen times in the mirror. She stood in the middle of our parents' kitchen, one hand clutching her silk scarf like it was her virtue, and the other gesturing vaguely in my direction, as if I were some venomous animal she needed protected from. She tried to seduce Liam, Mallory whispered, voice barely holding together. I walked in on her. She was in his shirt. The room went quiet, not just silent, dead. Even the old refrigerator seemed to hum softer, like it didn't want to get in the way of what came next. Mom was the first to speak. Please tell me this isn't true, Callista. Her voice had that cold tilt to it, the kind she used when she was already convinced I was guilty, but wanted to hear me confirm it myself, just for the performance. I opened my mouth. No words came out, because it wasn't true. But I also knew that truth never had much weight in our house when it went up against Mallory's tears. Dad's voice cut in sharper. You've always been jealous of her, ever since she was born. She's trying to build a life, and you— He pointed at me like a courtroom accusation. You couldn't stand it, could you? I was stunned. Not because I hadn't expected them to believe her, but because they hadn't even asked me. No one asked what Liam was doing sneaking into my room when I wasn't home. No one asked about the passive-aggressive notes Mallory left taped to my mirror for months. No one remembered that just 2 weeks ago, Mallory screamed at me for wearing a blue blouse because it stole attention from her engagement brunch photos. What they did remember was this. She was the baby, the golden child, the one they talked about at church, the one who could do no wrong. I was the backup act, the filler sibling, the Callista, can you help us clean up, daughter. That night, I was given 15 minutes to pack a bag. We're not kicking you out, my mother said, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. We're just creating space. For her lies, I choked. You're rewarding her for lying? My father's face reddened. You're lucky we're not calling the police. That's when I stopped talking. Not because I had nothing left to say, but because I realized none of it would matter. It was 10:48 p.m. when I stepped into the cold night air, carrying a single duffel bag, a worn coat, and a secret. I was pregnant. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Ezra. We'd only been together a few months, and in truth, I wasn't sure what we were. He was kind, gentle, mysterious. We met at a quiet art auction downtown. I assumed he was just another private collector. His clothes were understated, his voice deep and calm, and when he looked at me, it was never with expectation, only with presence. Like he actually saw me, the real me, and that was something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. We weren't planning a future, not yet. But when I saw the 2 faint lines on that test a week ago, my hand went to my stomach in shock and stayed there in something closer to awe. I hadn't told him. I hadn't told anyone. I thought I had time. Now I had nothing but time and nowhere to go. I ended up in a roadside motel 14 miles from home, the kind with flickering signs and a vending machine that still sold Pop-Tarts. The walls were paper thin, and the heater rattled like an angry snake. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands wrapped around my middle, trying not to cry. I didn't want to cry. I wanted someone to call, not for a ride, not for a bed, just someone to say, "What happened? Are you okay?" But no one did. Not a single text. Not from Mallory, not from Mom. Not even a fake concerned emoji from Dad. Just silence. As if I never existed. 2 days later, Ezra found me. He didn't knock. He didn't call ahead. He just appeared, standing in the doorway of the motel like something out of a different life. I blinked at him in disbelief. How did you— I tracked your phone, he said simply. You forgot I set it up when you kept getting lost in Midtown. I didn't know whether to feel violated or grateful. I leaned toward grateful. I'm sorry, I mumbled. I should have told you. You mean the baby? He said softly. I froze. He stepped inside. I saw the test in your bathroom drawer. Weeks ago. I was waiting for you to tell me when you were ready. That was Ezra. Always waiting. Always patient. But not passive. I'll get your things, he said. You're not staying here. I have nowhere else. Yes, you do. The next place was a downtown loft. Quiet, sun-drenched, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a fridge that looked smarter than me. He handed me the keys like it was nothing, like I was nothing to pity. I don't want charity, I whispered. He turned to me, eyes steady. Then don't take it as charity. Take it as what people who care do for people they care about. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the ceiling and kept hearing my father's words. You've always been jealous of her. I hadn't been jealous, but I was angry. Not just because they believed Mallory's lie, because they wanted to. Because believing her meant they didn't have to face the quiet truth that they never wanted me as much. I reached for my phone and opened a blank note. I didn't title it. Just started writing. Not to them. Not even to Ezra. To myself. A record. Of everything. So that when the time came, I'd remember who I was when they tried to erase me. Maybe you've been the villain in someone else's story simply because you wouldn't play their victim. And maybe that's not your burden to carry. Ezra didn't ask me to explain anything that first night in the loft. He didn't push for details, didn't ask how my family could turn so quickly, or why I looked like I hadn't slept in a week. He simply handed me a mug of peppermint tea and sat across from me in silence. The good kind. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. But silence had never lasted long in my life. Not when Mallory was involved. 3 days after I moved in, I opened my email out of habit, though I already knew I wouldn't find anything from my family. Not even a "hope you're safe." Instead, I found something worse. A press release. Upcoming influencer Mallory Renner signed sponsorship deal with Bloom House Interiors. She was wearing my design in the photo, the emerald dress, the cowl neckline, the clean edge taper I'd sketched for weeks and sewn on the dining room table, needle pricking my fingers while she lounged nearby, sipping overpriced matcha and pretending not to notice. I stared at the screen, nausea curling in my throat, and not the pregnancy kind. Ezra came up behind me. You okay? I closed the laptop slowly. She's using my work. He paused. Do you want me to make it stop? I looked up at him. Calm, composed, always just 2 steps away from action. Ezra didn't posture, didn't threaten, but he had resources I could barely comprehend. I had no doubt that if I said yes, he could pull the plug on every brand that had touched Mallory's name. But I shook my head. Not yet. I spent the next week quietly applying for a design copyright. I gathered my sketches, timestamps, email trails. Ezra connected me with someone who knew someone, and within days, I had an IP attorney reviewing everything with razor-sharp precision. She's sloppy, the attorney said. Didn't even change the stitch detail. This is traceable theft. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Because stealing my design wasn't the point. Mallory didn't want the dress. She wanted the validation that came with being seen as creative. She couldn't stand that I had something she didn't. That I could build something with my hands when all she had were followers. That's when I realized something darker. She didn't just want to erase me. She wanted to replace me. 3 nights later, I found myself staring at a ceiling fan again. Different ceiling, different bed, same spinning thoughts. Ezra lay beside me, arm draped over his forehead, half asleep. Can I ask you something? I said into the dark. Mm-hmm. Why are you helping me? He turned his head slowly. Because you never asked for anything, and the people who never ask usually need the most. I swallowed. And, he added, because I've been you. Ezra didn't talk about his family much. What little I knew came in breadcrumbs. Cold father, distant mother, a legacy built on freight, shipping, distribution. Trillions moved in silence. Ezra had walked away from it all years ago, quietly, like everything else he did. They tried to decide who I was before I could, he told me once. So I left before I believed them. And now he was here, letting me breathe, letting me rebuild. I wondered what it was like to have a person like that in your corner and not be terrified they'd eventually disappear. The real storm came the following Friday. Ezra was at a meeting, and I was scrolling mindlessly on my phone, trying to keep the morning sickness at bay, when a headline stopped me cold. Mallory Renner opens up about family trauma and infidelity. My sister tried to destroy my life. She'd done a podcast interview, a 45-minute emotional monologue, complete with trembling voice, sighs, and a carefully curated, vulnerable look that screamed expensive PR coaching. She was always competitive, always tried to be the center of attention. I think maybe she couldn't stand that I had something real. She painted herself as the survivor, the wronged, the brave little sister who'd overcome cruelty from someone who was supposed to protect me. I slammed the laptop shut so hard it echoed. It wasn't just a lie, it was a branding strategy. My phone buzzed. Ezra checking in. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked into the bathroom, stared at my reflection for a long minute, and whispered to my stomach, "They just made their last mistake." That night, I told Ezra everything. Not just about the dress, not just about the podcast, but about what it felt like to be erased in plain sight, to be rewritten in someone else's narrative, to know the people who made you would rather burn your name to ash than admit they got it wrong. "I want it back," I said. "My story, my space, everything she stole." Ezra nodded. "We'll do it smart." "I want it slow," I added. "I want her to feel it." Over the next month, we built two things in parallel: a legal case against Mallory for intellectual property theft, a brand, not my name, not my face, just the work, an anonymous account on Instagram featuring my designs, styled on real women, teachers, baristas, nurses, women who'd never be chosen to walk a runway, but looked like goddesses when they wore something made for their real lives. The account grew faster than I expected. Then came the email. A casting director from a popular daytime show. "We're obsessed with your aesthetic. Would love to discuss a segment on women-run design collectives." They didn't know who I was. But Mallory did. Because the morning the segment aired, I got a single text from her. "You think this changes anything? You're still the reject." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not because it didn't sting, but because she was wrong. I wasn't the reject, I was the replacement. The letter arrived in a plain manila envelope. No return address, no stamp. Just slid under the loft door, like a ghost had hand-delivered it. I opened it, expecting more legal spam. Instead, it was a copy of a legal document. Notice of property transfer. Last will of Evangeline Renner. My grandmother's name, her house, my name, crossed out. In its place, Mallory Renner. I blinked, reread it, looked at the date. It was filed just 2 weeks after my parents kicked me out. That was supposed to be my inheritance. Grandma Evangeline had told me herself, years before she died, when Mallory was too busy shopping for fake eyelashes to visit her. "She sees herself in you," Mom once said, almost bitter. All that stubbornness. Now Mallory had it. All of it. I took the letter to Ezra that night, my hands trembling in a way that no amount of hot tea could fix. "She forged my signature," I said. "She had to. There's no way I signed this." He looked at the paper, eyes narrowing. "Not only did she forge it, she did it badly." He turned it toward me, pointing. "That loop on the R? That's not your stroke. It's hers." I looked. He was right. It was her handwriting, just carefully slowed down, meant to mimic mine. The problem was, she always looped her R backward, like some performative cursive she'd never grown out of. A sharp chill shot through my spine. "She didn't just want the house," I whispered. "She wanted to erase the proof that I was ever meant to have it." Ezra didn't waste time. 2 days later, we were in a private law office in Midtown, seated across from a woman named Leslie Merrick, specializing in forgery litigation and estate disputes. She didn't offer small talk, just glanced at the letter and said, "Yup, we'll eat her alive." I didn't want to eat Mallory. I just wanted my grandmother's truth back. "She doesn't deserve that house," I said. Leslie smiled. "Don't worry. By the time I'm done, she won't even want it." While Leslie filed paperwork, we started laying groundwork behind the scenes. Ezra was deliberate, not impulsive, always 10 moves ahead. "You don't want a courtroom scene," he told me. "You want a collapse. Quiet, public, irreversible." We found out Mallory had already moved into the house and was planning an open house influencer event there, branding it as a modern heirloom revival for her new product line. "I'll burn the whole thing down myself," I muttered, watching the promo reel. "You won't have to," Ezra said calmly. "She's already lighting the match." On the day of the open house, I showed up unannounced. The old Victorian house sat polished and white, fake hydrangeas on the porch, a rental furniture truck parked outside. The front lawn was filled with girls in pastel dresses and linen suits sipping overpriced canned spritzers. Mallory stood near the door, dressed in all white, like purity made flesh. She didn't see me at first. I walked past the valet, past the fake welcome sign that said, "The legacy starts here," and stepped right into the foyer that used to smell like my grandmother's lavender soap. Mallory turned. Her face paled. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "I was invited," I said, lifting the cream envelope in my hand. "By Evangeline Renner. Remember her? The woman you robbed." She started to shake her head, but I wasn't interested in the performance. I opened the envelope. Inside, a cease and desist filed that morning, and a forensic handwriting report confirming forgery. I handed it to her. She didn't take it. "Congratulations," I said. "You just threw an illegal event in a house you don't legally own." She grabbed my wrist suddenly. "You're not going to win, Callista. They'll still believe me." I leaned in close. "Then maybe you shouldn't have signed your lies in cursive." The fallout began that night. One by one, the brands she'd partnered with started pulling out. Once the lawsuit was made public, an estate theft case with forged documents attached, they had no choice. Suddenly, her sponsorships weren't inspirational. They were liabilities. She went on private for a week, then deleted all comments, then posted a tearful Instagram Live, claiming she was targeted by jealousy and forgiving those who wanted to hurt her. But forgiveness doesn't work when no one's apologizing or watching. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was sharp and desperate. "Callista, what the hell are you doing? This is family. Family doesn't air dirty laundry. You're ruining everything." I listened, replayed it once, then deleted it. Because what she meant was, "You're ruining the illusion." It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about what the house represented. That I was never supposed to inherit anything. That I wasn't supposed to have a legacy. They wanted me forgotten, scrubbed, buried under Mallory's glitter. Instead, I was putting her on trial, and I wasn't finished yet. Mallory's apology video dropped at 9:02 a.m. It was everything I expected. Messy mascara, a cashmere throw draped across her shoulders, slow piano music playing faintly in the background. She sniffled her way through a vague confession that some paperwork was mismanaged and that haters don't want to see women rise. I watched it once, quietly, from the loft kitchen as Ezra brewed coffee. "She thinks branding herself as the victim will fix everything," I muttered. "She's banking on sympathy from people who don't read legal filings," Ezra replied. But this time, the sympathy wasn't coming, because the internet doesn't forget, and neither did the brands she'd scammed. One by one, they dropped her like she was radioactive. Event invitations disappeared. Her follower count slowed, then slipped, then stalled. But Mallory wasn't built for silence. So she did what Mallory always did when backed into a corner. She went on the offensive. The article hit less than 72 hours later. A tabloid piece filled with shadowy, anonymous sources and bold claims. Callista Renner accused of jealousy-fueled sabotage. Insiders say she's obsessed with her sister's success. My photo, an old one, taken outside my first design internship, was printed right next to a caption that read, "The Forgotten Sister Strikes Back?" I stared at it blankly. "She really thinks she can outlie me publicly and privately," I said. Ezra didn't respond right away. He was scrolling something on his phone, jaw tightening. "What?" I asked. "She gave them a tip," he said, handing me the screen. "Mallory sent them your medical records." I blinked. "What? How?" "She hacked your email, or bribed someone. Either way, they're hinting at the pregnancy now." My heart plummeted. That part of my life, the part still growing quietly inside me, wasn't hers to use, wasn't anyone's. "This ends now," I said, voice flat. Ezra nodded once. "Then it's time to let them know exactly who they've underestimated. We didn't post a video. We didn't write a thread. We didn't argue in comment sections. We launched something. It was subtle. No faces. No last names. Just a brand, Renner. A design studio built on the idea that resilience is an art form. Every piece came with a handwritten message from the maker. Stories about survival, starting over, and the quiet power of self-reinvention. The first drop sold out in 2 hours. A week later, a popular talk show featured the line, "Mysterious founder channels heartbreak into beauty." The internet lit up with speculation. And for the first time, Mallory wasn't the one holding their attention. Meanwhile, the legal case continued behind the scenes. Leslie Merrick, our attorney, updated us in clipped, sarcastic emails. "Mallory's lawyers are posturing. That's fine. The audit will gut them." "She claimed you gave her verbal permission. Bold strategy considering we have her voice on record saying, 'Just fake it, no one will notice.'" This girl's ego is writing checks her career can't cash. Leslie was the kind of person who could dissect a lie in 10 seconds and make you laugh while doing it. She also had a zero-tolerance policy for melodrama, which is why her next message made me sit up straight. Mallory offered to settle. She wants a public apology in exchange for walking away from the property. I advised her to get a therapist. That night, Ezra and I sat by the window, city lights bleeding into the glass, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself feel something close to stillness. "Do you want to settle?" he asked. "No," I said. "I don't want to destroy her. I just want to make sure she never gets to rewrite my story again." He nodded, thoughtful. "Then we keep building, quietly, until the truth is so loud, they can't hear her anymore." A week later, I posted a single photo. It was just hands, mine, stitching fabric with a subtle embroidered message. I was never broken, just buried. No caption, no explanation. But it went viral anyway. The comments poured in, stories from women who'd been disowned, dismissed, erased. They weren't looking for sympathy. They were looking for space. And finally, I could give it to them. Mallory went radio silent after that. No more posts, no more lives, just silence. And I didn't say a word either, because sometimes the loudest revenge is letting them scream into the void while you build something real. The sun was just starting to soften when the rooftop filled with the gentle buzz of music, soft laughter, and clinking glass. The baby shower wasn't extravagant, no celebrity chef or flower wall, but it was thoughtful, intimate, and entirely mine. Every detail reflected who I had become, not who my family once insisted I be. The guest list? Tight. Women I'd met through the Renner Project, Ezra's inner circle. People who knew what it meant to start over. Real people, no posing, no masks, no one pretending to like me out of obligation. Ezra was by the bar, sleeves rolled up, pouring sparkling cider for a table of women discussing the latest capsule drop. He looked over, caught my eye, and winked. And for one brief, quiet moment, I felt like I had made it through something impossible. Until the elevator dinged. I didn't need to turn around. I felt her presence before she even stepped onto the deck. Mallory, wearing white again, as if that could erase everything. A bouquet of pastel peonies clutched in one hand, and something clenched behind her smile that even Botox couldn't soften. I stood. You weren't invited. She tilted her head. You really think I'd miss this? A ripple of tension moved through the rooftop. Ezra took one step forward, but I raised my hand. Let me. I walked toward her slowly. You think you can just show up with flowers and erase what you've done? She dropped her smile. I came to make peace. No, you came because people stopped watching. Her lips twitched. You're still bitter. No, Mallory, I'm done being bitter. You can't poison what I've built, and you sure as hell can't be part of it. For once, she didn't fight back. Just stood there, eyes flicking around, searching the faces of strangers who didn't know her and didn't care. Then her voice dropped, almost a whisper. Mom and Dad asked me to come. They thought maybe it's time to move on. I blinked. That's when I noticed it, behind her. At the rooftop's far end. Two figures standing awkwardly at the entrance. My parents. My mother, clutching her purse like it might explode. My father in his Sunday best, sweating through his collar. I exhaled, slow and steady. So you brought them too? They wanted to see their grandchild, Mallory said. That's all. Ezra walked up beside me now, quiet but solid. I think you should leave, he said to her. She stiffened. Who even are you to her? Ezra didn't flinch. I'm the man who stayed when you all left. They did leave, eventually, but not before my mother tried one last desperate move. As she passed, she looked at me with eyes that didn't hold guilt, only weariness. You'll understand one day, she said, when your child looks at you and you have to choose between what's right and what's easy. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, but I looked down at my belly, hand resting over it, and thought, I already chose. Later, when the last guest had left and the candles had burned low, I sat with Ezra beneath the string lights. You okay? He asked. I think so. Do you want to tell them anything? Ever? I thought about it. Then I shook my head. They didn't want the truth, just control, and I'm not handing that over again. The next morning, I posted a photo from the shower. Just me, standing in front of a table filled with hand-painted onesies, candles flickering behind me. No tags, no names, just a caption. Some people will only show up when they think you've made it. Don't mistake them for home. It got shared thousands of times. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I had shown up, for myself, for the life I was building, for the future that didn't have to look anything like the past. It started with a knock that wasn't meant for me. I was upstairs, holding my daughter, still barely 2 weeks old, rocking her against my chest while sunlight slanted across the nursery walls. Everything smelled like clean linen and lavender. The world had finally quieted. Then came the knock again. Firm. Hesitant. Ezra answered. I didn't move. From the top of the stairs, I could hear it. A voice I hadn't heard in months, but had lived in my bones for far longer. Is she home? It was my father. Ezra's voice was calm, but colder than I'd ever heard it. She is. But this door's not for you. There was a pause. Then my mother. We don't want to fight. We're just here to talk. We want to meet the baby. Ezra didn't flinch. You made your choices, and she learned how to live without you. You don't get to rewrite that now. Another pause. She's still our daughter, my father said, quieter now. No matter what happened. Ezra opened the door wider. Not to let them in, but so they could hear what he said clearly. Funny, that wasn't true when she was bleeding and homeless and carrying your grandchild. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was hollow. Then the door shut. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. Just clear. Because I hadn't needed them to grovel. I'd needed them to understand. And they didn't. They were there because they had nothing left. Mallory's career was in ruins, My parents had lost the house in a quiet foreclosure, and the social circles that once adored them now whispered behind champagne flutes and folded napkins. Regret is loud when it's desperate, but it's not the same as remorse. Later that evening, I sat on the patio while the baby slept. Ezra brought me tea and sat beside me. "They'll try again," he said. "Eventually." "I know. What will you do?" I looked out at the skyline, fingers wrapped around the mug. "Nothing. Nothing. They spent years punishing me for existing on my terms. Now I'm living on mine. That's the real consequence." He nodded slowly. "That's not revenge." "No," I said. "It's recovery." The next morning, I posted a short message to my Renner community. Not a story, not a reveal, just a reminder. You are allowed to heal without inviting the people who hurt you back into the room. That message was for the thousands of women who had sent me emails, but it was also for me. Mallory hadn't made a public appearance in weeks, but rumors circulated. A luxury brand that once signed her dropped a statement. "We regret our past partnerships and stand with creators whose voices were silenced." One line. That was all. Ezra smiled when he read it. She's learning what it feels like when power isn't inherited, it's earned. I didn't gloat. I didn't watch the slow crumble with glee. Because the truth is, when you've been buried, watching someone else fall doesn't fill the hole they left. You do that yourself. And I had. The air was electric the night of the Renner Gala. We held it in a restored brick loft downtown, once a textile mill, now transformed into an open-concept design house flooded with warm lights and sharp silhouettes. Nothing ostentatious, just quiet strength, like the women who built it. I stood near the archway, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching guests drift between displays of our latest line, each piece tagged not with a model's name, but with a story. She left a home that never loved her. She stitched her survival into the seams. It wasn't just fashion, it was reclamation. Ezra slipped beside me, straightened my shoulder strap. "You did this," he said. "We did," I replied, but I didn't look at him. My eyes had landed on two familiar figures standing outside the glass entryway, just far enough back to avoid the attention of security. My parents. They hadn't knocked this time, just stood there, watching. My mother looked older, tired in a way makeup couldn't fix. My father clutched a folded program, the Renner logo visible through the glass. For a second, I felt the ache again. The old reflex, wondering what it might feel like if they had simply said, sorry. But then I looked around. At the community I'd built. At the women laughing together, unburdened. At my daughter sleeping soundly in the arms of Ezra's sister, who treated her like her own blood. I turned away from the glass. Because they weren't part of this story anymore. Later that evening, I took the mic for a short speech. No script, just truth. Not everyone who shares your name will respect your spirit, I said, but you get to decide where your story begins again and who deserves a seat at your table. The room exhaled. No cheers, just a ripple of knowing. I smiled, stepped back, and let the music return. On the way out, a young woman, barely 20, stopped me. "My mom told me I was a mistake," she whispered. "But after watching you, I think I might make something beautiful anyway." I hugged her, tight. No words needed. Because I had been her once. And now I was something else entirely. Looking back, I realized that being cast out wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of becoming someone I was never allowed to be. I used to think forgiveness meant opening the door again. But now I know, sometimes healing means keeping it shut, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. If you've ever felt erased, silenced, or overlooked by your own family, just know, you are allowed to start over. You don't need their permission. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? What helped you finally choose peace? If this story resonated with you, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from Or what part spoke to you the most? And if it didn't hit for you, that's okay too. Let me know why. I read every message. If you found this video powerful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. We're just getting started.